Greetings from O.P. Jindal Global University. Winston Churchill once said, and I quote, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." The spirit embodied in these words is what we need in these testing times. And it is with these words and spirit that I, Aditi Singh, lecturer and chair of JGU Pro Bono Publicus, along with my colleagues, Ms. Arushi Bajpai and Mr. Harsh Mahaseth, assistant lecturers and board members at JPBP, extend a warm welcome to all of you to the virtual inauguration of JGU Pro Bono Publicus. The JGU Pro Bono Publicus is a research group which volunteers to provide high-quality multidisciplinary research to think tanks, advocacy groups, civil society organizations, as well as individuals engaged in public interest matters. The student researchers, under the guidance of faculty members from the Jindal Global Law School, also provide research assistance in cases pending before the courts in various jurisdictions around the world. JPBP also aims to provide students with an opportunity to engage with multifaceted research work and to develop the skills and values central to social justice, while at the same time providing a venue for the students to make a meaningful and practical contribution to human rights issues. Today, we have also organized a panel discussion on filling the justice gap, the role of higher educational institutions in order to mark the occasion. The illustrious panelists include Honorable Mr. Justice Swatantra Kumar, Mr. M.C. Mehta, Professor Chan Wing Cheong, Ms. Flavia Agnes, Mr. David Wong, Ms. Shireen Irani, and Ms. Monica Feria Tinta. We extend a warm welcome to all our panelists. I would now request Professor S.G. Srijit to deliver the opening remarks and inaugurate the JGU Pro Bono Publicus. Professor Dr. S.G. Srijit is Professor and Executive Dean of Jindal Global Law School, O.P. Jindal Global University. He holds an LLD with high honors from the University of Lapland, MPhil from JNU, MBL and LLB from the University of Kerala. Prior to joining JGLS, he worked with reputed institutions like the Arctic Center, the University of Lapland, National University of Advanced Legal Studies, and the University of Kerala. Professor Srijit writes extensively, and his research has been published in reputed national as well as international journals. Professor Srijit, we are delighted to have you with us today, and I now hand over the floor to you. Professor Srijit.
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. On behalf of the O.P. Jindal Global Law School, O.P. Jindal Global University, with great pleasure, I welcome you all to the inauguration of the JGU Pro Bono Publicus, a student initiative of Jindal Global Law School, which aims inter alia to provide research support to institutions and groups engaged in matters relating to public interest. Although a student initiative, this project is the brainchild of a faculty member, Ms. Aditi Singh, lecturer in the law school, and a few motivated young faculty members of the law school, of which Ms. Arushi Bajpai and Mr. Harsh Mahaseth deserve special mention. Law is indeed a profession. One of the finest characteristics of this profession is that it makes one think things in their totality and holism. Lawyer's mind is on a constant shift from the particularity of judicial routines to the totality of social welfare, and oftener the vice versa. Lawyers have both the sense of the real and the ideal, thanks to the legal education, which makes them think for the microcosm and for the macrocosm. Professor Philip Allott echoes this truism persuasively. The special relativistic reality of a lawyer's mind is separate from, but parallel to, the rest of social reality. Within the binary of the universal and the particular, the pull of the universal is often tempting, a quality that prompted many of the finest minds in the legal profession to transcend the work of the particular, espousing the altruism of the universal. Communitarian sentiments drive them thenceforth. In the spirit of communitarianism, lawyers participate in an alternative process of social production, where the sense of I in the particular expands to a sense of we in the universal. It is from such a transcending, such an identification, such a rediscovery of the self that pro bono becomes a motivation. Saluting all those individuals who have gone through this process and reached this finest state of thought and action. I congratulate my young colleagues for their efforts in establishing JGU Pro Bono Publicus, which I hope will not only be a platform for public service, but also will be a medium for many students to develop communitarian sentiments. We are truly delighted that on this happy occasion, we are joined by many distinguished individuals, Justice Swatandar Kumar, Mr. M.C. Mehta, Professor Wing Chong Chang, Ms. Flavia Agnes, Ms. Shirin Irani, Mr. David Young, Ms. Monica Feria Tinta, and my distinguished colleague, Professor Shruti Pandey. I also acknowledge the presence of the Deans of Student Affairs and Initiatives, faculty members, and students of Jindal Global Law School and other schools of the OP Jindal Global University. Having said this, on this joyous occasion, in the presence of our distinguished panelists and this August gathering, I declare the JGU Pro Bono Public as officially inaugurated. I also take this opportunity to welcome you all to the panel discussion on the theme, Filling the Justice Gap, the role of higher educational institutions. As much as you, I too look forward to hear our distinguished panelists. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Srijit. I would like to now invite our moderator for the panel, Professor Shruti Pandey. Professor Shruti Pandey is an Associate Professor of Legal Practice and Director of Center for Human Rights at the Jindal Global Law School. She has been a human rights lawyer, activist, and practitioner for more than 25 years, having worked especially on gender, health, housing, urbanization, equitable development, public interest law, and legal remedies, and a range of related issues and constituencies. Before joining the JGLS, she was the Human Rights Program Officer with the Ford's Foundation's Regional Office for India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. And in early years of her career, she was also associated with the Lawyers Collective, the Human Rights Law Network, besides consulting for several other eminent national and international human rights institutions. Professor Pandey, we are delighted to have you with us today, and I now hand over the floor to you. Professor Pandey.
Thank you, Aditi. Once again, congratulations for envisioning the Pro Bono Publicus at the Jindal Global Law School. It's bound to be a very precious space for all of us at the university. And a very warm welcome and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone present here. I join Aditi and JJ Ellis in welcoming all of you to today's conversation that marks an important beginning for us in the university. It's my privilege to especially welcome the distinguished panelists and to moderate this panel discussion. My primary task would, of course, be to stitch together the pieces that you weave and bring to the table today and perhaps create a bigger and richer tapestry out of it. I'll try my best to do that. Here's what I propose. I will introduce each of these speakers in the order that we have indicated to you in the program. I request that you keep your presentation for about 10 to 12 minutes, and one of you will indicate to you when you at 10 minutes for you to wind up in the next 2 minutes. And then I will try to summarize in a couple of minutes each presentation and before introducing the next speaker. And then we will keep the Q&A for the end when we take all the questions from the audience, which would be texted to us. We'll take them all together for all the panelists at the end of this program. And I hope that works for everyone. And I hope the technology supports us also. So all fingers crossed. Aditi also asked me to say something to set the tone for this conversation. I'm not an expert like all of you. But I have been a law and justice worker for more than 25 years. And in that capacity, I've been a learner and an observer of the imperatives of justice of our times. And it's in that capacity that I just share some of my thoughts. To speak to the theme today, I think today justice gap is not just a catchphrase, which gives us a methodological or a strategic direction. I see justice gap as a poignant description of the grim reality of our times today, which is a combination of many layers of many gaps within that one phrase. So for me, it is an ontological imperative. The justice gap that is no longer something that just affects a few sections. There is absolutely no one on earth today who is not a victim today, including all of us. We all are inside it. And so the justice gap then gives responsibility as well as an agency to each one of us at both personal and professional levels. In fact, it forces us to merge our professional, personal, and political, I would say. We are left with no other alternative today. We must begin from personal transformation. That seems to be the only way forward from the vastness and the intersectionality and the complexity of justice gap today. I see Pro Bono Publicus as an important initiative that helps us do that. So I hope it would address the justice gap from wherever we are in the power spectrum and intersection, at whatever location, universities, legal profession, law firms, companies, civil society organizations, and so on, and in whatever capacities and capabilities we have at our command. So at the very least, I hope that Pro Bono Publicus will fill the vast unmet justice needs of our society today. But I say, very deliberately say at the very least, because to me, the higher level contribution of such initiatives are to build relationships and connections. To me, the building of the continuums along with taking individual responsibility is the most important contribution we can make today as citizens, professionals, cohorts and collectives who are concerned for justice. So that's how I look at Pro Bono Publicus, very ambitiously. So yes, we need, the civil society needs young students to support the civil society through research, writing, help in distilling ideas, drafting petitions, organizing conversations, and so on. And the students surely need the opportunities and spaces beyond internships to engage and gain practical exposure to real life situations and to be able to contribute on an ongoing basis. And this is a lot already, especially today when the spaces and the support for the civil society and intellectuals are shrinking very sharply and are under attack. However, I see this more than just a win-win situation for the two sides. I don't see them as two sides. I see this as fusing the two sides into one, where they work together, where we all work together, each bringing our own strength and bringing it together into a pool of resources. And lastly, but most importantly, I see this initiative as something that will help us reclaim our own agency, responsibility, our own morality towards justice, to keep our own conscience and soul alive in the climate of despair, disillusionment, and darkness that seems to surround us. I believe that I want to quote the American civil rights leader, John Lewis, who we lost recently, who said that all of us are, he said, I believe all of us here are trying to find that way into more, he said we must find a way to get in the way and get in good trouble, unnecessary trouble. And I hope that we all are trying to find our ways into that good trouble, the necessary trouble. And I can't wait to hear from you what your good troubles are. So welcome. Are we ready to start? Aditi, are we ready to start?
Absolutely.
Any other point that I have missed for housekeeping, and should we go in the order that we have So because there is, we may encounter technology glitches and connectivity issues, I request you to be a bit flexible with the order. We will try to keep with the order, but there may be some changes as we go forward. But as per the program, Justice Swatantra Kumar, I would request him to begin this panel discussion. Justice Swatantra Kumar is the former chairperson of the National Green Tribunal of India and also a former judge of the Supreme Court of India. After having been the Chief Justice of Bombay High Court and a judge of Delhi High Court and Punjab and Haryana High Court. During his tenure as the chairperson of the National Green Tribunal, he was instrumental in delivering several landmark judgments, widening the horizons of environmental jurisprudence in India. Some of his judgments were of international scope. He also introduced the practice of a consultative process of stakeholders in the dispensation of environmental justice. Currently, Justice Swatantra Kumar is also a distinguished professor of law and justice at the Jindal Global Law School. So, Justice Swatantra Kumar, may I invite you to please present.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all of you. Well, I'm very happy to note that Jindal University takes a step forward in this direction and get into the pro bono services and making its institution alive to the need of the pro bono services to the society at large. Well, I have a little experience of this because I was working with Professor Tracy Hester from Houston Law School, who with the ACOEL is very deeply involved in the pro novo work and publicus. But what I really wish to talk about the 10 minutes that you sort of got to say is let's look at our constitution. You know, preamble of our constitution talks of providing the citizens of this country in kind of freedom or justice. Now, this justice is in three concepts: social, political, and economic. Now, how do you provide a social justice to people? Social justice to people is fundamental to the concept of access to justice. If the people of the country are unable to have access to justice, then probably it will be the greatest constitutional weakness in the frame of our society. Now, when we talk of social justice, that essentially would mean that access to justice now in our system is practically attained the status of fundamental rights. Now, what is access to justice is that you are able to provide easy access to justice, inexpensive access to justice, and expeditious justice to people. So how do we provide these three with the huge population of the country that we are in? Now, to define the justice gap that we are talking about is very essentially featured by the concept of access to justice. Now, LSC defined the justice gap as difference between the civil legal needs of low-income Americans and the resources available to meet those needs. So it's basically a question of basic needs and what you lack. Now, how far the educational systems or the higher education in our country can help in the pro bono services or providing of help to the needy people of our society, you would be surprised to know that very large section of our society is unable to even assess the judicial system of the core country to get justice. So to get justice is something different, but even to approach the system itself is very, very difficult. To resolve this, pro bono work, the higher educational systems or the law schools can definitely contribute a lot in a very constructive way. The simple ways which I think could be available is that you start right from the United Nations Human Rights Declaration of 1948. That is where the basic rights of people were globally accepted. Now, the students could work in this by very simple activity, but very useful. For example, today you have the legal services authorities established in district courts, in the higher courts, even in the Supreme Court. You have the Lok Adalats. Lok Adalats are being conducted in all levels of Indian judicial system. Now, what can be done by the higher education system, which to my mind will serve a dual benefit? One, that it will be able to provide experience, that is the professional experience to the students. And secondly, they will be able to serve the society at large. Now, when we talk of there can be cells of higher education institutions attached to every district local authority or the Lok Adalat body constituted in the district courts, because the poor section of our society is able to access to the courts with great difficulty. So we need to provide them help in drafting, in preparation, in arguing, in engagement of counsel, and delivery of judgments at their doorsteps. So how do you do that is that each student cell could be created at the district levels, which will have category of students attached to that cell, and that cell would help the lawyers of the legal services authorities or the lawyers who are working pro bono. There are large number of lawyers who do work pro bono, and once they are working, you get attached to them, you do their drafting work, you do their preparation work, you look law for them. Only thing that you will miss is the arguments. That's all. So the major part of legal system preparation, you will be able to learn at the very beginning or at the during the course of your legal course that you are doing in the universities or the higher courses. Now, other thing that you can do is holding of camps, which can be said to be holding of camps at the panchayat levels. Now, we are primarily a rural country, and panchayats is the best way of interacting with the people. Now, let me tell you, the people at the panchayat level, that means at the village level, are ignorant of their rights, one. They are ignorant of laws, two. Three, they are ignorant of the procedures. So all three ignorances are combined together, and on top of that, they are economically weak. So all ingredients of unfair treatment to section of the society persist in those areas. So what can you do is hold your camps and effectively participate through the panchayats, because in villages, panchayats hold a great control over the day-to-day life of the villagers. So becoming a part of the panchayat in the villages, you could perform all these functions, which will include the handling, making them dispensation of knowledge about their rights, about the law, about the remedy. So knowledge of law without remedy is meaningless. So remedy available to them and how to effectively take recourse to that remedy, that would be very beneficial. Another aspect by which the national law schools or the legal universities or even normal universities can help is with regard to inclusion of subjects in college curriculums and role of paramount importance because of the poverty and development. If we are not able to handle the basic issues at the society, which are essential for the purposes of developing a proper system for remedial reliefs to the people who are really in need thereof, we have to work it out in a very systematic manner. And let me tell you one thing more, that the young blood in the institutional levels is very effective. You know, you are energetic, basically, you're intelligent. You know, today, unlike our times, you have net at your service, you have research conducted through different modes, and by God's grace, all of you are not so economically disadvantaged. So putting all these factors in a positive pocket, your approach for helping others would be more positive. I would think that the institutions have a great role to play, not only by virtue of helping others, but that indirectly help your own self. Tomorrow you may be lawyers, you may be judges, you may be politicians, you may be anybody. But if your basic approach during your academic career has been that of helpful, because see, pro bono is nothing but a social good. If you are get into the habit of doing a social good at the institutional levels, this will become part and parcel of your life, and you will be able to give, firstly at the lower levels, at the spread levels, then city levels, then state level, and then at national level. So your contribution from national level can travel to global aspects. So all these matters, if you take up together, they will definitely talk and show you the reforms that can be carried out by simplification and by participation which is effective on the ends of your educational institutions. And I would just congratulate the Jindal University for having stepped out, and which is one of the, I think you are one of the first, if I don't mistake, one of the first institutions which has sort of initiated this program of pro bono services, and you want to do work in that field. And I'm sure if you will ask for any help from any quarters in the judicial fraternity, including the lawyers, I think you will get a very positive response and a help. And I wish all of you good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Swatantra Kumar. That was a perfect note to begin this conversation, where you pointed out the role of young people, and especially the young law students from privileged backgrounds, to bridge the gap, the justice gap, which you identified very rightly, about the gap between the unmet needs and the available resources, so the students can bring in can support the legal services of various kinds that you enlisted, and the students can also help in help in building knowledge and awareness among people at large, and litigants, to understand law and rights better, and also in developing the curricula. And I think those are very, very important areas in which we see pro bono public is contributing from the Jindal Global Law School. So thank you for your thank you for these ideas and for your encouragement. I am going to now invite our next speaker. So Mr. MC Mehta, we are having some difficulty in connecting with him. So I'm going to now invite Mr. Chang Wing Cheong as the next speaker. Mr. Chan Wing Cheong is a professor of law and the director of Pro Bono Center at the School of Law in Singapore Management University. He's also an advocate and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Singapore, a barrister of Gray's Inn, and a qualified attorney of the New York State. He teaches and researches mainly in the areas of criminal law and family law, and enjoys contributing his expertise to the legal community and the nonprofit sector in different capacities. He's the recipient of several prestigious awards, most recently the Friend of the Law Society of Singapore Award 2016, and the Special Recognition Award by the President of Singapore for sustained, outstanding, and exemplary contribution to the nonprofit sector and to society in 2014. So Mr. Chan Wing Cheong, please.
Okay, thank you so much for the kind introduction. And thank you for the invitation to this virtual event. Hello from Singapore. So first off, I wish to congratulate the Jindal Global Law School on the inauguration of the JGU Pro Bono Publicus. I have watched the development of the law school from afar, and like many others, I'm extremely impressed by what you have achieved in the very short 10+ years since its founding. Today's inauguration is testament to the Jindal Global Law School's vision to be a premier university of national and international repute, delivering the highest quality education to enable students to enter the 21st century's global marketplace, and yet being strongly rooted in India and wishing to contribute actively to the challenges facing India today. The law school's commitment to pro bono sends an important message to its students and graduates that one cannot succeed in life without giving back to the community. I believe this was a creed of Sri O.P. Jindal, in whose name the O.P. Jindal Global Law School and the Global University were named. Let me now speak about the current COVID-19 pandemic, which is now happening, and that's why we have to hold this, I guess, this inauguration through virtual means. So what does a COVID-19 pandemic mean for pro bono? Is it wise to spend time on pro bono when jobs and livelihoods are under threat because of economic deprivations caused by the pandemic? Shouldn't law students spend more time on their studies or sharpen their CVs to enable them to find better jobs or even any job when they graduate during the pandemic? My answer is that it is more important now than ever to get involved in pro bono. The traditional avenues of legal help may not be available because of lockdowns, and you could also have more offenses being committed, such as family violence and online scams, because people are staying at home more. And small businesses also have difficulties fulfilling their contractual obligations and so on. So really the need for legal services is more now than ever. In today's panel, I'm pleased to hear that we have a former judge, you have NGOs, you have representatives from the bar, you have academics. It is through such networks that we can build an ecosystem to ensure that no one falls through the cracks because of inability to afford legal services. When students take part in pro bono activities and absorb the ethos of community service, they learn that having legal knowledge is not only to enable them to get a better paying job or to serve the top end of society. They learn that law is an instrument which allows the disadvantaged in the society to assert their rights, to level up, and they learn how to serve the community. If students learn this at an early stage of their studies, they will hopefully carry this in their DNA even after they graduate. What I'm talking about does not have to require a lot of sacrifice. We of course rejoice when pro bono lawyers successfully challenge an unjust decision or win their case in court when odds are against them. But there are small things too that everyone can do. For example, you could be the person on duty giving legal advice when you come across an applicant who looks lost and dejected. A kind and reassuring word to the applicant may be even more important than the legal information that you provide. Or you could be the person in practice where your client is genuinely unable to pay full fees. Do you stop acting for him, or do you charge him a little bit less? A little kindness will go a long way. So what I want to say in conclusion is a simple message. We all have a part to play in creating a better world and a legal system that we can be proud of. And I echo what Justice Kumar has said earlier, that the earlier we start, the greater impact there will be. So it is like ripples on water, slowly expanding out. So students who start early on this path can see how law can affect lives of the disadvantaged. And they will find that their law studies will be much more meaningful. The role of the law school, in my opinion, is to enable students to find this connection and to treasure that connection. So on this very short note, I wish JGU Pro Bono Publicus every success in the future, and I look forward to finding out about all the work that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chan Wing Cheong. Those were very, very important advices to our students. The fact that the work that we do as students to provide pro bono assistance gives us an early start to developing our own values and our own sensitivity, and which we carry as you very rightly said in our DNA. When we take up the careers, and an early start means more opportunities to draw meaning from the work we do as lawyers. And I really appreciated the fact that you pointed out that at this moment there's a special need for such assistance, because the traditional avenues of providing legal services are stressed because of the lockdown conditions. But on the other hand, the need for legal services is much higher because businesses are suffering hardships. We know that violence has gone up, all kinds of violence have gone up. So I'm sure our students would find these advices very useful. And thank you so much for making time for sharing your views with us. May I now call upon the next speaker? Aditi, are we going in the order now?
Yes. Mr. Mehta has still not been able to join due to some electricity or internet issues. So we'll continue in order from now.
Flavia, should I call upon Ms. Flavia Agnes?
Sure.
Yeah. So so our next speaker is Ms. Flavia Agnes, who's an Indian, she's an eminent Indian women's rights lawyer with expertise in marital divorce and property law. She's written and published extensively on various themes around these areas, on minorities and the law, gender and law in the context of women's movements, domestic violence issues, feminist jurisprudence, and so on. She's been working in the field of women and law since the 1980s, which was at the beginning of the second phase of the women's movement. And since 1988, she has been practicing at the Mumbai High Court, along with she co-founded the organization Majlis along with Madhushri Datta. Majlis literally means association in Arabic, and it campaigns for and provides legal representation for women on issues of matrimonial rights, child custody, etc. Since its inception, Majlis has provided legal services to more than 50,000 women many of them destitute, and counsel them. She also she also advises the government in various capacities. It's my privilege to invite Flavia for this panel discussion. She's somebody I have personally drawn a lot of inspiration from, and I can't wait to hear her in this panel.
I have to unmute right now. Okay.
Welcome, Flavia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Shruti, for your introduction about me and also for having me to speak here. I didn't expect to come in so early. I thought I was speaking at 3:45. That's the time you started for me. But it doesn't matter. How many minutes do you have to speak? How many minutes, Shruti?
Sorry, I was on mute. So 10 to 12 minutes is okay, and if that's fine with you.
Okay, okay.
And do you want me to give you an indication when we cross about 10 minutes?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So I will maybe wave.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. So, as Shruti has introduced me, we have an organization which was started in 1991. And the legal center mainly focuses on providing access to justice to marginalized women and children. We don't get state funding. We get private funding. And we take up women's cases. And we have an all-women team. So basically it is myself and some of us have evolved from the women's movement. And it is in this context, I acutely felt the need to work towards access to justice to the marginalized people, marginalized women and children in particular. Now here, the context in which this work started was, if you see from the 1980 to 90, India passed many laws for the benefit of women. Law reform was a very important agenda. During this time, the rape law was changed. The dowry-related laws were changed. Dowry murder, abetment to suicide, cruelty to women, 498A, various things got changed. Many other law against the commission of sati, for instance, aborting the female fetus in search of a male child, male fetus, etc. These were all the issues that were thrown up by the women's movement in the 1980s. And 1980, these issues that got highlighted were in particular on the criminal law side, but there was also the Family Courts Act, which provided a special forum, which is not very strictly formal as the city civil court. That was set up in 1989 in Mumbai, and procedural changes, etc. And later, in 2005, we got the Domestic Violence Act, which is a civil law. Now, when you have all these laws, somewhere I felt the women's movement believed that if there is progressive laws, justice will happen automatically. You don't have to do anything more. You just go to court and say, this is my problem, and justice will happen. But that's not the case. Each case has to be fought. Each case has to be litigated. In each case, you have to produce evidence for what you're saying in order to get your rights or to get justice. So at one level, there were expectations very high that now we are in a different world and the judiciary is going to respond to us. Procedures have become less formal, etc. But the ground reality was not. Nothing much had changed, actually. And women were still not able to access the courts because their fear was that lawyers charge a lot of money. They will not be able to afford it. The lawyers may collude with the other side lawyer, and the case will not go forward. And basically, justice will not happen. So the NGO lawyering was a new concept. Particularly, NGO lawyering for women's rights was unheard of. At least for civil liberty, human rights, there was PIL had just started. There was some kind of forum. But individual cases to litigate, and particularly oriented towards women, was something that was quite rare when we started. So but some young women lawyers joined us, and that was really nice. They worked with us for some time. And then students from National Law School started coming in, and they were a class apart. Their understanding of law in theory, etc., was great. They have exposed to a lot of discussions on various conceptually, theoretically. They had a very sound knowledge, but what they lacked was completely a practical experience. And they were shocked when they visited a family court or followed a rape case to see the gap between the law reform, the law that is there in statute books, and the actual happening in the court. The skits of drafting, collecting evidence, helping women to think logically, asking the women to, like, if I say my husband earns so much, so what is your proof that he's earning so much? Or where is he working? Now, women did not know any of this. So the first thing that the law student learned with us is how to get down the history. It's not like a civil law. You're not fighting a property case. These are very personal experiences of women. And many times they want to minimize the violence. They don't want to blame their husbands. It would be more blaming the mother-in-law, etc. So even for taking down the history, it required a lot of training. Now the law students come to us for a month, sometimes 2 weeks. And that's not a period to learn anything at all, because we get court dates for once in two months or 3 months. So the court experiences in a particular case will be very minimal. Then we put down a rule that anybody who wants to come to us must come for 8 weeks, not 4 weeks, because they do have a occasion for 8 weeks. But what is their ambition is to work in that stipulated time, work with a corporate lawyer, work with a criminal lawyer, work with an NGO. So all that comes in your CV. So they're more interested in building their CV rather than understanding pro bono litigation. So when while we had a lot of applications from students, the minute we put down this 8 weeks norm, the number of students applying went down actually, because they didn't want to give this kind of time. But having done all that, what I would like to say is that the law universities or the national law colleges or private universities like the Jindal Global Law School charge an enormous amount of legal fees for their course. So only those from privileged background can really access this. While the old system of 3 years of law was costing you very little actually. So a lot of people chose law as an option and went into litigation thereafter. But we noticed here that the law students who come, their ambition is to join corporate firms. They're not interested in litigating. So very small number, small percentage would be interested in litigation. And among those also, they are interested in litigation in the Supreme Court or at the most in a high court, but not necessarily in a trial court. Very few actually want to do civil trials or criminal trials because there's not much money there, even otherwise, even without pro bono. Cases go on for a long time, etc. According to me, you have to cut your teeth in a trial court. You should understand civil and criminal procedure code. And only then will you get a sound footing to go further and argue the cases. But I realize that students do not want to do this. Either they want to join a corporate firm or they want to go abroad for further study. And according to them, having an internship with Majlis really helps them. Because when you go abroad, that you have worked with an NGO, you have worked with a sort of a pro bono legal firm, helps your CV. And we said we're not interested in this to help you to build your CV. Our interest is how to strengthen our litigation work. What you bring into us, or what you put into is how you build up our teamwork, how you transfer your own knowledge to our lawyers who are very young, etc. These are for us very important things. So while they were with us, they worked very, very studiously. They were very good in research, etc. So that was it. That was the end of the relationship. I've also watched very closely the pro bono legal clinic that is there in national law, that's NLU Bangalore. That's the first law college, the first national law college that came up. And I was doing my MPhil there. So I was meeting students, I was teaching there. And I realized they're very, very committed. While they go there once a week or something, they go to a village. They do whatever they have to do, draft, etc. And after that, they're not interested in that at all. So I said, what happens to the case? It says somebody else takes it over. So they don't see the progress of a case. They don't see how the case, and mainly they will be drafting legal notices rather than filing a case in the court. Whereas monthly it is very different, that we don't go through this mechanism of legal notices. We directly take down the facts and we draft and we file in the court. So at least they get that kind of experience. Also, they watch other cases, how they have progressed, etc. So while I feel that there are lots of young students, and particularly in the first, second, third year of law, they're very interested in the litigation that we do. In the fourth and fifth year, they're not interested. They're preparing themselves for joining a corporate firm, or they are going abroad and for further studies. And when they come back also, they don't join an NGO. Very few of them actually join NGO. They are only interested in this corporate work because they spent a lot of money on their legal education. And some have taken loans and all. They have to pay that money back. They have to earn that money. So this goes on for 10, 15 years. But after that, there are cases where a person gets very frustrated that how am I contributing to the society? Is a corporate job what I'm looking for, or do I want something else? That is the time some of them come back to join an NGO. So according to me, while so much pressure is there to pay your fees at a very high level, then you are almost canceling pro bono option for them. So I don't blame them actually. Their situation is such and they have to do this. And when we say pro bono, that becomes a side activity. It is not your passion. It is not your total involvement. And we have students who have come back, who have joined corporate firms. And when I meet them, they say, ma'am, can I help you voluntarily on weekends? And we all know that weekends, you can't do anything. We also have a weekend, not just you. So I can do some research for you. I can do something else for you. So they're very well-meaning people, but they're not ready to commit in a sense that is required to do this kind of litigation, because this litigation, though it may be pro bono, it is as competitive, which requires a total attention. And it's not something you can handle by the way, because it happens pro bono. So this has to be inculcated while you're studying. Now, some countries have that every lawyer every year must have minimum years of pro bono. Minimum cases, whether they're a senior counsel, whether they're a fresh lawyer. They've set up like 5% of your litigation has to be pro bono. Now, unless such a thing happens in India, that every year it is important when you renew your practicing license every 3 years or whatever it is required, and then they see your the work you have done as a compulsory, as a mandatory requirement. How it is for doctors when they become doctors, it is important that they do 2 years of rural service. But in the legal profession, there's nothing like that. If something like that is introduced, and the students are exposed to this concept right from their days in the law school, maybe that may have better results. At the other side, we have state legal services, national legal services department, state legal services department, etc. They also have lawyers, very few. And only those who can't make it in the regular, as a regular field as a lawyer, they join free legal services institution. So the quality of the lawyers there is very, very poor. Most of the death penalty cases that have received death penalty was fought by a legal aid lawyer, because very highly qualified lawyers will not come in here. And if they come in there, they will be able to avoid a death penalty or a life sentence, even for a rape case, even for a wife murder case. So that is the inequality that we have in our society. And the last point I want to make is the situation of our courts, the inaccessibility, the delays in the courtroom, like a district court, like in a district is so vast, so very difficult to come to the district to litigate. Then we have subordinate courts below that, and then over even below that. But the people prefer a panchayat system where it is accessible in their own village, where you don't need a lawyer, and where both sides can have their representative talking about their rights, and the case gets settled in 2 or 3 sittings. As compared to this, our formal litigation process is extremely tedious, extremely difficult, even for a maintenance of 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees. It was years, even for an interim order. Whereas if it was a village panchayat, they would have decided very fast, okay, like, you are earning so much, so you declare what you're earning, and this would be your maintenance. For that, the woman is spending so much money to access that amount, and after that, the husband doesn't pay, then you again litigate to get that money out of him, execution proceedings, etc. So that becomes extremely difficult. So while I really applaud you for having this initiative to bring in this concept of pro bono, unless you have mechanisms on the ground or at the law school level itself, I don't see much future happening here when they come out of the law school. In the law school, they may be the best of students, very committed. I've seen all of them. In fact, I've seen them for over like now 20 years or so. So we need to do something else, because law has become a very lucrative business in our country today. It was not so like when I started 20 years ago, but today it's extremely lucrative. Lots of foreign corporate firms that have come to India. And there are lots of law schools that are mushroomed everywhere, and everybody seems to be doing law more than anything else. Engineer or doctor, it seems that the money is today in law. So that's the change that we are witnessing. So into that, pro bono litigation is important. We need to build it up. And I wish you all the best. So you will be able to inculcate these kind of concepts in the global law school and other law universities. We have got some brightest students from the Global Law School. Let me share that with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Flavia. Those were so we had to have these sobering, reminders that there is a lot of challenge. There are lots of challenges. The justice system poses so much challenges in general, and especially when we are pursuing justice on behalf of marginalized communities, the challenges we know are become even worse. They are long drawn battles with very little resources. Very, very demanding, emotionally very demanding, and we know that that it's a very messy journey. We know that just getting a law passed is not enough, as Majlis's journey has shown. That the best of laws need a lot of work over and after the laws are passed, and then the next journey is to the realization of those rights, which is. And so this, so for the NGOs that are doing what you call the NGO lawyering, you're already doing very difficult task, and it is very fair on your part to flag that a lot of students join as interns to just build their CVs, and their commitments don't last beyond that. You are also, very rightly and fairly, you flagged the reality that lawyering has become very lucrative. Law degrees have become very expensive, and And so it's harder for the young people to then sustain their commitment and interest, and they don't believe, they don't work on keeping the relationship. And I had said that in the beginning, that this is not just about working on some project, or it is a long term commitment and relationship that is the most important part of such initiatives as Pro Bono Publicus. And I think that our students should be, because this can be this doesn't help us work on systems of justice, and it doesn't help the students develop their sensitivity. I think all of those are very, very fair points. And thank you so
I'm very sorry to be so blunt.
No,
but I think it was important to base it not on a concept, but on the experience.
no, I think you were very, I think
there are challenges that we need to address.
in saying that these are brilliant students, they are well-meaning students, and that you understand their reality. And I think there has to be a way. This is a beginning of a conversation, but there has to be a way for the students to understand that this is a responsibility, that the opportunities are also, there is a responsibility that is tied to it, and it cannot be taken lightly. Absolutely, absolutely. This, we cannot emphasize this enough, this point enough. And thank you for saying that. And it wasn't blunt at all. It was the reality that you flagged, and we expected this point to be brought up, and I'm really grateful to you for that. You have worked very hard, Flavia, and for very long. And you don't have to apologize for being blunt. Absolutely not. You have borne the weight on your shoulders. So absolutely.
And the important thing is we have survived for 28 years now. And I think there are a few lawyers who stay on with us, become senior lawyers. They have a team working with them. So that's on the positive side.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. I will now invite our next speaker. I'm not familiar with your work, David, but let me introduce you. David Wong is a solicitor with the practice in Hong Kong and New South Wales, Australia. He's passionate about practice of law, pro bono service, and nurturing entrepreneurship. He founded the Pro Bono Hong Kong, a charity that works to improve access to justice and legal literacy, to forge a fairer society, a community that is more fair, just, and equal. He is also the founder of the Hong Kong Public Interest Law Society, a local nonprofit organization for lawyers working to improve access to justice. Having more than 10 years legal experience in Australia and Hong Kong, pro bono and public interest matters have always been a consistent feature in his career. So this is, I'm so grateful that you can make time from your time zone for this on a Sunday. But I personally be very curious to hear about your experiences from the jurisdictions that you work in. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Dean, distinguished guests, Justice Kumar, members of the faculty and students viewing online. Thank you very much for putting this together. It's a real pleasure to be invited to this wonderful event, and an absolute honour to share the stage with such an esteemed panel of people. I also add my congratulations to the Jindal Global Law School for inaugurating the JGU Pro Bono Publicus. The team should be very excited and very proud. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, I studied in Australia, and I wanted to share a little bit of my own journey in the law, just to highlight how important the role of higher education is in shaping the future careers of law students. I guess, like many law students many young students, and to some extent the public at large, perceptions of law and legal practice as a child is often skewed by television, by Hollywood or Bollywood, or I suppose now social media and Netflix. Sometimes those lawyers are beautiful, glamorous and funny, and at other times they're nasty hired guns protecting villains or evil multinationals. While that all may make our profession look both exciting and enticing, I guess what we all as lawyers know that it's a very different experience, and the long hours searching through published legislation or law reports or drafting lengthy memorandum often somehow gets left on the cutting room floor. It is only at law school that one finds out how the minutiae of law actually works and all the hard work that is required to be put in between the courtroom scenes or those tense meetings with opposing counsel. Of course, another thing that often gets left out is the cost of legal services and how without careful attention, the law can really become the purview of the rich and powerful. What I mean by that is, if I've learned anything in the practice of law over these last 10 or 15 years, is that it has no intrinsic moral compass. It is really just a tool. It is a tool often wielded by powerful people. And the role of lawyers in our system really, and in our respective societies, is to ensure that the law and those executing the law do not create injustices. Therefore, I feel the role of law school is not just to teach the law, but to teach justice. I was very fortunate that in my law school, it did just that by opening my eyes to how the business of law interacts with the practice of law. And one of the key opportunities that I will always remember is the ability to work in the legal center, which was part of the law school. And the legal center offered pro bono legal services to those in the community for free. And students were able to have a first-hand experience in interacting with those lawyers and helping those lawyers give free legal advice to those who otherwise couldn't have afforded it. It was my first real opportunity to see how the law interacts with real people in real life and their livelihoods. It was no longer just an abstract concept or framework of codes and words and terms, but you could also see how the smallest of regulations could create enormous suffering in people's lives, such as by unfairly denying them welfare payments for food, or it could easily open up new opportunities for families by giving their kids access to simple things like the local school catchment area or school assistance. It was these kind of small experiences at the legal center and throughout law school that then allowed me to think about my own values as a person and my future values as a lawyer. And I guess that's really the wonderful thing about university, is it creates that conversation and creates that experience for law students to think about how they will practice after they have graduated. As many of our speakers have said, there's a lot of money in the law, and a lot of us will in fact go to practice in commercial law firms, whether for a while or for the entire length of your legal career. And I guess what we can do is show that practicing law and making a living from the law is not mutually exclusive with helping access to justice. And throughout my career, I've been very lucky in that I found many like-minded lawyers, and together we've been able to build those kind of organizations or opportunities for lawyers in private practice, in-house counsel, to participate and give back to the community using their technical skills. And that is the essence of pro bono. And I guess all of that transcends kind of whether we are in India or in Hong Kong or in Australia or in Singapore, because despite the differences in our cultures, our countries, and to some extent our legal systems, I'm incredibly amazed and happy that we all share a common law heritage and a commitment to social justice. And through our commitment to social justice, we can actually enhance our common law and our rule of law in our respective societies. So whatever we go on to do in our legal careers, I am always grateful that institutions of higher learning, like my own, were able to awaken me to not just the wonders of the law, but how we as lawyers can give back and help society. So I'm very, very pleased to have been invited to this inauguration, because speaking from experience, the work that you will go on to do in the future will immensely help the students as they embark on their own future journey through the law. Because I always believe that the seeds of social justice are best planted in the fertile young minds of law students. So on that note, I wish you all the best, and thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Oh, thank you, David. That was a very moving. Address, and so rightly you pointed out that law itself as a discipline is, I mean, there is an inherent, by its very inherent nature, it lacks an intrinsic moral compass, and that it is, most of the times, it is a tool for the powerful and the affluent. And that puts a lot of onus on us as lawyers, and we need to constantly remind ourselves of developing our own values as we use law in our work. And thank you for reminding that the law schools have a special responsibility to inculcate those values at a very young age among law students, because like the previous speakers have pointed that, you know, the earlier the better. If we do it at a younger age, it stays with us. And of course, all of us have our own individuals, we have the responsibility to remain self-aware and to keep exploring our values and working on them. So and the fact that despite the differences in our locations on the globe, there is a oneness, there's a commonality of our experience. And I really admire the work that you're doing at a very young age, David, and thank you for sharing that. And we hope to be drawing from your experience of setting up an organization and how you have negotiated these challenges. Thank you once again. Do I invite the next speaker, Shireen, now. So Shireen is the founder and the executive director of Pro Bono, which is an independent non-profit organization in the UK, connecting organizations in need of legal assistance with lawyers and students interested in contributing their legal skills for the public good. Its online platform has global footprints, bringing together people and projects from around the world and allowing organizations to source assistance across jurisdictions. So more than 100 projects have been matched through Pro Bono since it was launched in 2010. Shireen, you'll be interested to know, is also a corporate social responsibility executive at Fisher. She's been committed to the development sector and to finding ways to tackle social causes. And she first recognized the need for a platform such as Pro Bono during her postgraduate studies. So when she was herself a student, and when she joined Fisher, she developed the idea with the full support and backing of the firm. So that itself was a negotiation of its kind. She was named she's also highly recognized and has received many awards. She was named the Young Achiever of the Year at the Asian Women of Achievement Awards in 2011. I have had the good fortune of watching Shireen's journey. She's quite a personal hero. I personally admired her vision, her commitment, and her dynamism for being a connector in the Justice Gap challenge, and without ever getting daunted. So such a pleasure, Shireen, to welcome you and to meet you again.
Thank you, Shruti. Thanks very much for that introduction, and thank you for this invitation. I should say that you guys are very lucky to have Shruti with you. She was one of the first people who believed in Pro Bono's work, and I have so much regard and respect for all the all the work she's done over her lifetime and now what she's doing with you guys. So yeah, you're extremely lucky to have her. And we're also very lucky to have students from Jindal Global University join us at iPro Bono. And what you're doing here today with the inauguration of the Pro Bono Publicus is a great step. I should say that I support Flavia in the sentiment that this is just the first step. I'll talk a little bit about my own experience. So when I started iPro Bono 10 years ago, it was this idea that came to me years before in law school. I only put it into action when I became a lawyer, but in law school, when I had this idea, it began as, there's a belief that most law students, we believe in justice, we're looking for ways to contribute our skills through research or through an internship, and an online platform will help us unlock all this potential. So that was the idea I started with. But I should say now that I believe I was wrong. There's injustice all around us, and there's no dearth of avenues for us to channel our good intentions. And if you really want to make a positive change in society, an internship is just not the way to do it. 2 weeks working at an NGO is really not going to do anything more than maybe give a little mark to your CV. But I should also say that most employers now are wise to that. So a 2-week internship does nothing. If you're going to commit to a social cause, I'm with Flavia, you have to commit to it long term. And really, why go for an internship? Why go and work with an NGO or a lawyer? Look around us, see what's happening in the country. I've included a photo here of our hunger relief campaign that iPro Bono did at the start of lockdown. It was one of those very rare opportunities and gifts that we had to be able to reach people at times of their greatest need. And as lawyers, we are so used to believing that the law is our only tool, it's the thing that is going to change society. And that's just not the case. When lockdown started, we were wondering, what do we do? And we spoke to our partners across India, and all of them said, every single one of them, right now people need food. Now, in a country like India, there's no dearth of need. There's no dearth of people in need of kindness. And as Professor Chong said, that's what we really should be channeling our energies into, providing kindness. And so when we went out and started fundraising and getting money to these groups to provide food for people on the ground, it was probably one of the things I'm most proud of as an organization in our 10 years. We got 6 million meals out to people. So just imagine what you can do as students there at Jindal. You have great ability to mobilize people, mobilize funds. And as students, you have this great opportunity to do so much more than just write. You can actually get up and motivate people. You can motivate your colleagues. You can motivate your staff. You can get engaged in the world. And I really urge you to start practicing your faith on your feet. So right now, where are we at? As a society, we believe in the rule of law. We believe that our legal systems are empowered. But frankly, are we? Where are we at in the country right now? Is the rule of law supreme? Do we have a thriving civil society? Most of you would have read about the recent news and how now civil society is extremely worried that it's not going to be able to get funding for its work. This is a real problem. Civil society cannot function with volunteers. It cannot function just with good intentions. It requires people like Flavia and her colleagues and my colleagues in iPro Bono India every day going in morning to night and dedicating their lives and careers to making change possible. So we need to think about how can we support civil society? How can we invest in civil society? So what can you do in your institution right now? What is the most powerful thing that I think you can do? You can think about how do you start investing personally and how do you get your colleagues around you to start investing in civil society with funding, with time, with energy. So one idea is start a society within Pro Bono Publicus that starts thinking about collecting funds, start doing fundraising events. It may sound very simple, but this is really right now the key way in which you can contribute to civil society, is to start thinking about how you invest in it, really invest in it. And at iPro Bono, we're going to be thinking about this more and more. When we gathered funds over this period of lockdown, we were really skeptical about what we could do. We were skeptical about how much we could raise. And then we thought to ourselves, okay, well, even if we raise a few lakhs, that's going to be enough to feed families for a month. It's going to be enough to get some people from the brink of starvation. So think like that. Even if you can't contribute much, even if you can't fundraise much, it will be something. And what you'll do in this process, and that's extremely important from our perspective, is you will learn about our work in depth, something you're not going to get from a brief internship. You'll learn about the work that civil society is doing day in and day out, because you need to communicate it. So learn about our work, engage in it really as much as you can, dedicate your skills and energy, but invest in it too. Invest your time long-term into keeping civil society thriving. Because right now, we cannot rely on funding coming from institutions, coming from abroad. It has to come from people who care about justice, truly care about justice, and believe in the rule of law, and want to see a thriving civil society. And I know that there are academics here as well who are tuned in for this event. And the academics at Jindal, I really urge you to write more because people will listen to what you're saying, to share your beliefs and share your concerns, share your research more widely. We have some wonderful publications now like The Leaflet. Share your writings with organizations like that and read important things and not just what's coming out of the mainstream media. If you're not subscribed to Majlis's newsletter, I highly recommend it. Flavia's writings inspire me all the time. She really is a very gifted writer, so you must have the privilege of reading what Flavia writes. So inform yourself beyond the mainstream media. I think Justice Kumar was talking earlier about engaging at panchayat level. That's something else I really believe is important. We're now so devoid of real experiences. We can sit behind our screens and we can engage with the world. It's just not enough. We have to get down to the level at which people are functioning day to day if we want to impact their lives. So get down to panchayat level and learn and listen to people. Think about the experiences they have day in and day out. I often feel deep gratitude for the life I have, because when I see what people go through every day, it makes me realize what a responsibility that we all have to really change things. But to do that, you have to understand where people's lives have taken them. So engage at rural at panchayat level. Practice day-to-day kindness. I really loved hearing what Professor Chong said, day-to-day kindness. And think about where we are right now and our own moral compass. Again, picking up from what David said just now, this moral compass, where are we at as a country? How do we feel about that? And if you feel outraged, say so. Say so on social media, write, protest. Make sure that people know that you care about this, that you care about the country, and that you want to do more than just go into corporate law. Because I agree, sadly, we are at a stage right now where most of you will go into corporate law. You will not be coming to join the civil society sector. Now, that's the case, fine, but don't forget your ideals. Don't forget to give to the people who were as smart as you to get into corporate law, but decided to get into civil society. Don't forget them, support them. Support them not just in good words and not just with volunteering, but actually support them monetarily. Think about giving 1% of what you have to your civil society organizations that you care about, because that's really what's going to keep our society just and fair. So if you believe in justice, this is what I really urge you to do in this new pro bono publicus that you have started. If you believe in the public good, this is faith on your feet. This is how you put all of that into action. Thanks very much again.
Wow. Shireen, thank you for that, for adding to the grimness that has been flagged by Flavia and others about the messiness of this. So this is not, we are not working in laboratories, and the real world is not so easy to navigate. And especially, so thank you for flagging the challenge of funding. So civil society, as you rightly said, cannot just work with volunteers and with uh, uh, um, with good intentions. Civil societies need sustained financial support and funding. And we know that the funding, I mean, legally funding is being denied to the civil society today. And that is a conversation that needs to be had separately. And I think our students should engage with that. But that is because funding can be a maker or breaker for the work that we want to do. So all the good intentions, uh, you know, could not, we cannot gain traction to our work without good, robust funding. And so, and that's such a great advice to our students, that apart from committing your time and your skills and your knowledge, you also, we must be personally invested and contribute and raise funds and persuade others to raise funds, engage with the political economy of these issues, and not just use law as a tool and approach rule of law you know, mechanically, because it is, we know, is a very treacherous domain. And definitely civil society, the challenges that civil society faces today is something that we need to really be engaging with, and just keeping ourselves informed, joining protests, writing, reading, sharing, are all part of the pro bono commitment. So it cannot be just an isolated commitment of providing services in a narrow time frame, but a longer sustained commitment which steps out of just law as a tool and goes uh, to really committing ourselves in deeper ways, and also sharing our own personal resources in these fights. Unless we do that, unless we have a skin into that, into of that kind into our work, the pro bono work does not really take us forward in our lives. And thank you for saying that in the way you said it, and building on what others had said earlier in indirectly. So thank you, Shireen, for that. And um, is Mr. MC Mehta, is he, have we been able to connect, or should we go to our last speaker? Aditi?
We should go to the last speaker, Ms. Monica Feria Tinta. Not been able to connect to Mr. Mehta.
Okay. I'm sorry. So one of our speakers, he is in a place where he knew that there were connectivity issues. He's one of our leading environmental lawyers, Mr. MC Mehta. I think he's not going to be able to join us. So with that, I think we will, I'm now inviting the last speaker before we get into a conversation, bringing the entire panel together. Monica Feria Tinta, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, please pardon me. It's my privilege to invite you. She's a leading public international lawyer at the Bar of England and Wales, practices as a barrister from 20 Essex chambers. She has the distinction of being the first Latin American lawyer to be called to the Bar of England and Wales. Her litigation work led to the first International Human Rights Court decision ordering the prosecution of a former head of state for crimes under international law. More recently, she made news as acting counsel in the first world climate change litigation brought by peoples from low-lying islands against a state before the United Nations Human Rights Committee. In 2019, she was amongst the 64 distinguished women barriers selected to feature in a celebratory exhibition of a century of women in law at the Middle Temple. The Lawyer magazine featured her in its Hot 100 2020 list as among the most daring, innovative, and creative lawyers in the United Kingdom. And there are many other awards and recognitions that she has received. May I invite you, Monica, to please share your views. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for giving me the floor. I am delighted to be with you today. It is a very exciting discussion, and I congratulate for this initiative to all of you. It's a wonderful initiative that I'm sure your students will benefit greatly from. I like to contribute perhaps just with three general ideas. The first one, I'd like to consider this project as contributing in a very positive way to add educational value to your faculty, to the students. That's not a point number one. And why do I say that? The bar, for example, is one of the most challenging places where to engage with the law, etc. But something that we value at the bar is that capacity to engage with practical issues. So how abstract concepts can, and the ability to take those concepts and to apply them to specific situations in legal context. And that's not something that comes out of nowhere. That's something that comes with practice. And having the opportunity already being at university to engage with practical cases, with practical problems, and use what one is learning at university, it's a formidable opportunity. And so that's something to highlight in this initiative for students really to take up that opportunity, that engagement with the law. Now, we have talked a lot about access to justice. I like to emphasize that access to justice is primarily an obligation that states have to ensure. So pro bono work will never occupy that pivotal place that the states have from the point of view of obligations under international human rights law. So states cannot say, well, now we have wonderful universities that can provide those initiatives. No, cannot be replaced. Yet, having said so, I'd like just to reflect with you on a couple of examples that can show to what extent pro bono work and engagement of universities at that level have perhaps given rise to some of the most exciting jurisprudential developments that have taken place in the world. And I give you a close example. Last week, we learned all about the passing away from Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg from the Supreme Court in the United States. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was an icon and a serving justice for 27 years at the Supreme Court. But how did this woman, this formidable woman, came to be, and her legal mind came to develop in the way it did? When Ruth Bader Ginsburg finished her law degree, she couldn't get a job in any law firm in New York. She had studied at Harvard and then at Columbia Law School. But as a woman, she did not have the same opportunities that her male counterparts had. She eventually went to work for a university. And it was while actually working as an academic at university that she created a center and started taking up cases that were brought before the Supreme Court in the US. Some of these cases were the pioneers in securing equality, gender equality under the constitutional law in the Supreme Court. I mean, these were the case that made Ruth Bader Ginsburg to be what she became. And these cases were brought, on behalf of people that otherwise would have not had that level of representation. And they created new law, groundbreaking law, and they shaped the law forever. It changed the position that women had in United States under different statutes and laws. So the Constitution for the first time protected women during the 70s in the United States. So her pioneering work started at university, engaging with the law, doing pro bono work, and that's what created this amazing figure that I think is one of the most important justices that have ever sat at the Supreme Court of the United States. And she left that legacy and that example for all of us to learn from. A second example that is interesting to also observe is the example of Neet Katyal, who eventually became obviously one of the most successful advocates before the Supreme Court in the US. Neet Katyal was a professor at Georgetown at the time that someone knocked the door with a pro bono case. And this engagement gave place to the case of Hamdan versus Rumsfeld, which actually created the precedent that stated the illegality of military commissions to judge Guantanamo Bay detainees. When he did the case, that was his first ever case before the Supreme Court, he told me that he invited many amicus curiae. And again, these amicus curiae came from universities all around. He told me that there was a very high number of them. And so this engagement of academia from different sources, serving the rule of law, assisting the court to better state the law, and to actually have precedents that are groundbreaking in themselves. So I wanted to give you those examples to show you in what way, even in societies where they have a pretty good system of law, pro bono has brought good, important ideas, innovative ways, and academic rigor to serve the court in the determination of very important cases. And I like then to reflect on a last idea, and that comes a little bit now to today and to my own practice. I am a barrister practicing in a commercial chambers. I am a specialist in public international law. I don't see pro bono as something that is important only at the very beginning of your career. I believe that as lawyers, we serve the rule of law. And that means that we act to strengthen it, and we act to make it a robust system because we profit from that system collectively as a society. And I'm talking from the English bar and the English legal system, which is one of the oldest legal systems in the world. Pro bono continues to be very important for practitioners there. One of the examples how I've been engaging with pro bono has been in the context of environmental cases recently. The example that was just mentioned before in the context of climate change. And this is it, I tie this comment to what my preceding speakers have said. There are certain contexts in which we have to react. COVID-19 was mentioned. Climate change is another urgent matter that right now the world is facing as a challenge. So I see great opportunities in that context for engagement, for identifying important cases to support. I personally was instructed on a case, inhabitants of low-lying islands that unless I could provide that representation, pro bono could not have that level of representation before the Human Rights Committee, which is creating a very important precedent, which is not going to be just relevant for Australia as a jurisdiction. These are inhabitants from low-lying islands located in Australia. But it's going to be important case law that will be a precedent for all the states parties to the International Cabinet on Civil and Political Rights. So quite honestly, I feel that my time is very well spent, has been very well spent in providing legal advocacy for this specific case. So I like to leave you with the following 3 specific ideas that you could consider in the development of your pro bono initiative. Number 1, I would say that amicus curiae interventions can be very well supported by pro bono work from universities, because you can bring academic rigor, and it can be very well supervised by professors at university. And number 2, I think that constitutional court cases are very important in the common law. I think the jurisprudence that you have from India has always been important jurisprudence. It is a system that is very respected around the world. And I can imagine that those experiences can be shared with other possible constitutional law cases in other places of the world. And finally, another a key area, I don't know to what extent that's part of the program, but since I am an international law practitioner, there are many human rights cases that reach different organs internationally that obviously can be also an important case to support. So domestically, I'd say that there is a big role for you, but also internationally. And with this, I don't think that one necessarily have to all want to do, the cases that are in the newspapers. Many often actually, those cases that are not visible in the newspapers are very worth of support and very important that they actually get support. So with those ideas, I like to leave my intervention there. I look forward to some questions and engagement with my colleagues. I think this is a very exciting opportunity to have that engagement.
Wow, thank you so much, Monica. I think you brought some very important points that are kind of making this conversation complete. First of all, just reminding us that access to justice is the responsibility of the government. That we need to keep on insisting that the government should be taking responsibility for that, and the civil society's job is to support, but the civil society cannot replace it and should not be replacing it. I think in these times of privatization, we are very easily letting go of the state's responsibilities. We are forgetting that, and thank you for reminding us of that. And very interesting. Area that we must pay attention to. In fact, I was also thinking of mentioning that in the beginning, that what is the role of law schools in the rule of law, in supporting rule of law. And so the academic litigators and the examples you gave, the inspiring examples you gave, including of Justice Ginsburg. I like the way you put them together as, so the universities can easily, so apart from the fact that there is a messiness in long-term engagement and there are challenges and there are, and that is something that continues to be, I mean, those are issues that we need to continue to, but these are more simple and doable suggestions that you have given to us very helpfully, that we could be involved in amicus interventions. In India, we don't have a very robust space for submitting amicus briefs. It's also shrinking and it's a messy space, but I think that it's an important space. And constitutional law cases, again, the contribution to those in terms of research and maybe filing cases, and advocacy with the international human rights mechanism at the international. These are, India is in a very special kind of relationship with all of these, and and especially in the current moment. But I think we should keep them in the horizon, on the horizon for the pro bono publicus to have this in our what are the possible ways of making a difference. And I think you also mentioned, which you didn't say in the three that you listed out, but you also mentioned the role that the universities can play in shaping laws, so in legal reform. And I think that's a very valid point. And I think our university has been doing that. We have actually had professors have been, their submissions were used in some of the landmark cases, and also we've been participating in some of the legal reform processes in the country. And I think pro bono publicus could join hands with those efforts in a very deliberate way. So thank you for reminding us of those and putting that on the table. I think with that, I really like the way that most of the issues have been covered by the speaker. So, and I think there was a very organic flow between one speaker to the other, and I really liked the way it, it kind of one took over from the earlier speaker, and I think most of the issues, most of the challenges, most of the constructive suggestions have been covered by the six eminent panelists that we have had today. And I thank you again for all of you for that and for sharing so generously your experiences and your insights. Could we open this conversation to taking questions from the audience? Aditi, would you be?
So Arushi Bajpai has written down the questions which the live viewers have written on the YouTube live stream. So Arushi will be reading out the questions for the panelists.
And how will it be done? So the questions will be to the specific panelists, or anybody can answer them.
Have question for a specific panelist.
Oh, thank you.
We have 5-6 questions for each one of the panelists. The first question is for Monica and Shireen. Do you think it is important to inculcate the values of social justice and pro bono work amongst the law students right from the beginning? And if yes, how can that be done?
Okay, can you repeat sorry, can you repeat the question? Because at the beginning your voice was very low. Can you just read it again, please?
All right, I'll read. Do you think it is important to inculcate the values of social justice and pro bono work amongst the law students right from the beginning? If yes, how can that be done?
Monica, do you want to go first?
As you wish.
Go ahead.
Yes. Well, I think that part of my message was, in a way, that we believe in the rule of law as lawyers because that is the best system in which a democratic system can work. I mean, part of the role of university is to form minds that can operate within those values. So I believe that this is not something that is not part of education. Is fundamental to the formative years of lawyers. And when I emphasize on the ability to discover the law as something alive and engage, with the practice of it from very early, I think that is perhaps part of the same. I don't see a distinction when you go to different areas of work. Fundamentally, you are always going to engage with the rule of law. So it is relevant for absolutely everybody, any lawyer at the formative level. What this initiative is doing is providing the possibility to engage with the practical aspects of the law quite early. And that's an initiative that therefore should be well received by any student at university.
Thanks, Monica. I wanted to add to that. Yeah, it's fundamental. When you go into law school, I personally believe that most people who enter law do it because they've got an inherent belief that justice is something that they want to pursue in their life. So of course, many people are going into it now for corporate law and for money, but I fundamentally think that most people who enter law are justice seekers. So actually the role of a law school is just to reinforce that, to keep that spirit alive. And at every stage of a young lawyer's life, that ethos only grows, becomes more real, that they contribute to that path to justice. So yeah, absolutely, it's fundamental that a law school allows its students to live that passion and dream and to foster it and to make it real, and to also give them the opportunity to see that there is more to law than just sitting down and writing, but really to engage with society. So giving them opportunities to work with people who need their help, not just throw the law at them, but to work with them to understand the law. So I think the role of a university is pretty fundamental in allowing people to manifest their deep held belief towards justice.
Thank you, Monica and Shri. We have next question for Professor Chung and David. So the question is, how do we encourage students to actively participate in the pro bono initiatives? Generally, the students are more inclined towards fancy side of law, that is corporate laws or law firms. So how do we do that?
Does Professor Chung want to go first?
I don't mind, but if you're ready, you can go first.
I'm happy to. I think the way that we can do that is really to make it as easy and as interesting as possible. I think there is obviously a natural draw towards commercial law, in part driven by, I guess, the very real need to make a living. We all have our own bills to pay and mouths to feed. So it's only natural that we're attracted to those areas that pay well. My own experience has been that if you make it as easy as possible, I like to use the term frictionless as possible, for lawyers to incorporate, lawyers and law students to kind of incorporate pro bono work or access to justice work or public interest work into their either current course of study or into their day job, then they would generally want to take advantage of that. For instance, I think, in my organization, we set up programs to allow law students to work with us side by side with the volunteer lawyers. And it's a very easy process. They just have to register and then they commit and they turn up. And, they're there for a few hours each week and then they can go back to their studies. Likewise for the lawyers, they can finish work a little bit early, come down to the center and then give the advice. Then they go back to either work or family or whatever. And we kind of have the whole process as kind of seamless and frictionless as possible. If we have those programs in place, those pathways to do pro bono work or public interest work, I think lawyers will naturally want to do it for a number of reasons, including that it's A, much more interesting, and B, just some diversity, because the other thing about corporate law is it can be monotonous and repetitive and also very distant in terms of the kind of impact that you see in terms of the practice of law on individual clients. I mean, if you act in an IPO or another merger and acquisition deal or another mega litigation, it's very hard to see the real world impacts of that. I think the greatest satisfaction from pro bono work is that really being able to see how the law impacts the daily lives of people in the community on a very important level. So I think highlighting those experiences, those benefits as well, because it sharpens your legal practice, gives you a much more diverse range of experiences, and allows you to communicate with a lot of more different kind of people from different parts of society. Highlighting the benefits of that and making it as easy as possible, I think it will naturally draw people to that. I'm sure Professor Chen, you'll have your own comments as well.
Well, actually, David, I'm going to say the same things. It's just in slightly different ways, because I think you have touched on all the. No,
much better than I can say.
Okay, so I agree with you that I think to draw students into pro bono, we must make that process as easy as possible and give them that good experience. So for example, you talked about how easy it is for lawyers or for students to register for a pro bono opportunity. So things like, how do you take part, make sure that the opening is available, and that if for some reason, which we can all understand, if there's some changes in plans, the opportunity is no longer available, give adequate warning of that, so that people can rearrange their time. So I think all of us, don't have enough time, in today's world. The 24 hours a day is simply not enough. So we want our time that we give to be meaningful. So if there are any sort of disruptions to the schedule, then let the person know well in advance. So the volunteering experience should overall be a good one. Otherwise, that is the fastest way to turn people off. Secondly, is to get students involved in what they're doing. So there could be emphasis given on training that is required. If you're giving advice on certain procedures in court, do they know enough before they are given that chance to talk to the litigants in person? So give them the training, and also give them the supervision and the debriefing, so that they can learn after that and reflect on what has happened, and then take that lesson away, rather than throw them in the deep end and they will have to learn. I mean, some people will, but also some people will not, and they'll be wondering, why am I giving up my time and no one is supervising me? I don't know what's happening. I wasn't taught this in law school. Well, precisely, it's an opportunity for experiential learning, which you will not get in law school. But that process, that teaching opportunity must be properly managed. And the final point is also touched on by David, which is that I think if everyone comes away with a feeling that they have made some meaningful impact during that time, they've made a difference, they can see what it is that lawyers can do, that will make that spark become this fire within, hopefully, to devote more and more time to maybe certain causes or certain organizations as part of the call in future as well. Okay, thank you so much.
And I absolutely agree, Professor Chan. I think you've hit another point on the head, is that having a diversity of opportunities, because different students will have different interests and different abilities. So some will prefer policy writing or research. Some will enjoy the more hands-on experience of dealing with lay clients. And by giving them, a range of opportunities that they can all take part in, I think that's another way as well. So you kind of have different opportunities for different types of students, because everyone has slightly different interests and different causes. Some people will prefer, women's and children's causes. Some people will enjoy other things. So I think that can also help.
If I can just pick up again on what you said, I mean, a lot of times we think that the corporate lawyers are, all out there to earn money only, and they don't have a heart and all that. But I mean, picking up on what David has said, also that there's pro bono opportunities everywhere, even in corporate work. So I'm not sure about your own experiences, but in Singapore, what we're trying to do is also to expose people to commercial work for perhaps charities, small businesses, and so on, who cannot afford to hire lawyers to advise them. It could be on a contractual matter, employment matter, or even like how to set up a charity, how about the governance structures. So these are all sort of relevant areas which anyone can do, and not just people who are interested in family or criminal work.
Thank you, Professor Chang and David. The next question is from Rahil Mehta, and the question is for Justice Kumar. Flavia, and Shireen. The question is there any way in which we can set up the infrastructure for involving students in PIL matters before Supreme Court? Like the law students could possibly help in research work or maybe the field work. And what are the challenges if we include such mechanism?
I can jump in there. So we recently had at Bono, we had a Supreme Court matter that was representing people who were living on the fringes of the railways. And you might have heard in the news that they were being thrown off the land. And our intervention was to find a way to make sure that they were resettled before there was any eviction process put in place. So first of all, we, as many of us do, we think about PILs, but what we've established within our organization, and I think other NGOs have too, it's much, much more powerful to take on cases and to do cases where you have your clients, where you have people who are affected. A PIL was a very useful mechanism in the past, but right now there are people who feel these injustices. And if you can find ways to build that class action, then nothing like it. Now, hands are needed when you do a class action like this. You do need to work with people on the ground to get their statements, to find out how their lives are being impacted. So something that we've been doing, I think the team have been doing at IPROBONO pretty effectively, is engaging law students to interview people affected so that we can take these class actions forward, so that they're not PILs who have some anonymous victim in the background, but you actually have real people who are taking the action forward in their own names. So yes, students can certainly be very, very helpful in that fieldwork exercise and getting the testimony from the people who are actually affected. By the way, sorry, since no one else is chipping in, I might as well jump in and say one more thing. I also, oh, sorry, go ahead, Flavia.
I agree with Shireen because when you do a class action, when you do a PIL, a lot of research is involved. It's not that you're talking to one person and you are drafting and filing. You are over a 10-year period, what has happened. We did this bar dancer case, the girls who dance in the bars. So it involved actually going and talking to these girls who are in the bar owners, everything. And then bringing out a report, like we got SNAT University to bring out a report. On their own, they wouldn't have done anything because we were there actively working there and giving them this material, but rather than lawyers bringing it out, we thought it would be much more respectable for a university to bring it out. So we had this entire thing, what is their economic status, why they come to Bombay, what is it, how do they feel about dancing in the bars, and a lot of such stuff. And that really helped in the court, because when they asked us, like, how do you know these girls, what happens to you? Because the media had constructed a whole sort of imagery that these are bad women, they come and dance, they entice men, and it is immoral activity. They swindle these men and amass a lot of money every night. Whereas you actually had the research done, what do they earn per night? What do they earn per a month? And what are their responsibilities? Why are they doing this? Some of them were doing it because they come from the dancing communities back in their villages, and they don't know anything else except to dance. Some were doing out of economic necessity. There were a lot of these different kinds, and most of them were they were the main providers for their families. And there was a lot of women at stake there. Around 75,000 women were in these dancing bars. So the research that went on prior to filing was at least 2 or 3 months, and we used the services of a lot of law students who were very, very enthusiastic and who also had the rigor of research. So, we could actually do the research and back up a case with all this practical information, which we put before the High Court first here in Bombay. And we won the case here in the High Court and then in the Supreme Court. So this material really helped us. So when you do a PIL, it's not just doing individual cases, a trial court case. It requires a lot more information to gather and put it before the court so that you have a case there. Because you're going against the popular grain that people have particular image, but you have to counter that with actual data. So I agree that there's a lot of work involved for students here, and particularly research work, so we can do very well with students. Sir, unmute.
Justice Kumar.
I will. I'll try and answer, okay? See, there are two things. There is a very common feature between pro bono and PIL. Classification is whether it is person related or cause related. A litigation can be cause related and can prove much beneficial when it is taken at the PIL stage. While on the other hand, if it is person related, PIL may not prove to be a very successful tool for achieving your object. Then what you need to do is follow the normal channel of litigation. But whether it is cause related or it is person related will normally be rising out of economic constraints or other limitations, for example, area limitation. For a person who is living in a remote, deserted area of our countries like forest areas, very difficult for them to assess the normal course of judicial process. Now, how these students can help is, it is not only in research. Firstly, I think your pro bono has to be part of your consciousness. I don't think that you can teach consciousness to people. It has to be part of your personality. If you are in the frame of mind where you consider that helping the society or doing the good to some people around you is part of your thinking process or personality, then obviously it is part of your consciousness. Because for a teacher, you can only teach alphabets or sentences, but what the person will speak will be the language of that person's mind, his consciousness. So therefore, the students, according to me, can do a tremendous job. You don't have to be worried about whether you are serving in a corporate sector or you're non-corporate sector, or you're a lawyer on the road, or you are a very rich lawyer by yourself. Everybody can do pro bono without limitation. For example, a rich lawyer can contribute in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of suggestion. While the younger lawyers who just joined the profession, they can get more involved into field work, as all of them have pointed out, that you can go and study the field work, collect data, do the legal research, participate. So it's basically that you want to participate. So there is no limitation on your activity. I don't know how many of you have ever known of Gandhiji's story about it. You know, Gandhiji was not a great commercial lawyer. He was exactly a pro bono lawyer. You know, that's why he was never a successful lawyer. He always tried to do pro bono work, and worst, make it worst, he wanted to do compromise of people. So he developed a reputation of a compromise lawyer. So ultimately, the commercial interest conflicted with his activity of consciousness. So, you know, ultimately, to cut the whole story short, he just explained his practice in 3 words, 3 lines. He said, by my practice, I might have lost an opponent. That means the opponent might have criticized him. By my practice, I might have lost the judge. By my practice, I might have even lost my client. But by my practice of pro bono and consciousness, what I didn't lose is my consciousness. So if you have something as part of your consciousness, you don't have to worry. Wherever you are, howsoever you are, for example, all of them are involved in such great activities for social good. You can get associated with them, do part-time job with them, go and do research. You have the advantages of having libraries. You have the advantage. How many students in India has the benefit of having a laptop? All of you are sitting here with a laptop. So what I'm saying is you have advantages. So use those advantages with your goodness to do some good to people and help. When you want to help somebody, there are 101 ways of helping. So I don't think you need a concrete path, to lay down a channel that you should go through this channel, only then you can do the pro bono work or good PIL work. For example, if you are doing a air pollution case tomorrow, it has to be a PIL in air pollution. You can't pick the person. Singrauli people suffered. But then that is what I am saying. So my request is that young blood should get into the habit of understanding that they owe a responsibility consciously to the people who are in need. So fulfill their needs in whatever form, in whatever help you can like. And that is one big advantage of this profession. You're a good practicing lawyer. Let you pick up one case every month, which you will do free of cost. That's a contribution. So that's all I would like to say. And thank you, everybody, please.
Thank you so much, Justice Kumar, Shireen, and Monica, and Flavia. I'm so sorry.
She wanted to add something. She had wanted to add something.
No, actually it was fine. It was picked up by Flavia anyway. So no, I'm fine. Thank you, Shruti.
We have a question for Monica. Monica, since you have appeared in several human rights cases before ICJ, Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and several other international court and tribunal, a lot of students are interested in international human rights, but they are not generally able to see how they could pursue an international career and appear as a counsel before international and regional human rights courts. So what would be your tip for the students aspiring to become international human rights lawyer?
Well, to be a human rights lawyer, you don't need to go to study specialized courses on public international law. But if you want to be a public international law practitioner, like I am, you do need to study many more years than just your basic law degree. Usually in England, public international law, for example, is even an optional course. In the original jurisdiction where I come from, public international law is an area of law that you study at the very end of your first law degree, but you really truly learn public international law doing a postgraduate studies. However, I think that public international law is relevant within domestic jurisdictions, and I think, and this is a point I guess tried to make in my intervention, and I don't know whether it was clear. If one wants to make a difference, you can make a difference right in the place where you are. So I like to encourage young lawyers not to necessarily think about what you think is the most exciting way to engage with the law, but sometimes you have that exciting way right in front of your noses and contributing to the very legal system in which you have originally trained in. I think that that's important to see that international law today, for example, is being very relevant in domestic jurisdictions. So if you learn this, you don't have to go to plead something to in a kind of Geneva or the Hague court. You can actually use that valuable knowledge in your own courts, in your local courts. Recently, to give you an example, I was invited to provide amicus curiae in 3 different jurisdictions. One was in Mexico, the Supreme Court. The other one was in the Constitutional Court of Colombia. And the last one was before the Constitutional Court of Ecuador. And these particular jurisdictions are monist systems, meaning that international law is directly applicable. In the common law system, we often have here in the United Kingdom international law arguments in our domestic courts, and the same happens in other common law jurisdictions. So you don't need to dream about being counsel in some international arena when you actually can very well apply skills that you may gain on a postgraduate study also in your own local courts.
Can I quickly add to that? I know the question wasn't directed at me.
Sure, please go ahead.
Thanks. I wanted to reinforce what Monica said, and I also wanted to share the perspective of my mentor, Judith Chomsky. So Judith works at the Center for Constitutional Rights, and she's taken forward several cases, corporate accountability cases, of international note. When I asked her path to becoming an international human rights lawyer, and that's when I was a naive student, she said there's no such thing as a human rights lawyer. You first begin law as, she said, I started working as a labor lawyer. I started working with unions. My friends started representing people who were on death row. Another person called a human rights lawyer that she knew began life working on tort cases for people who'd been injured. So don't think about becoming a human rights lawyer. It's all a bit amorphous. Think about how you can apply your skills to help people in need. And if you are gifted, if you are lucky with your cases, maybe you'll become somebody of note. That's not what you should be chasing, because it'll actually elude you. You have to sort of stick to what's real and what's applicable for your particular society and your place and time. So right now, what you all can do is get off the corporate law track route, if that's something you really want to pursue, is you want to go into human rights, and maybe start working with an NGO. That would be your first step into getting onto that human rights track in India, is to go and work with a fantastic organization like Majlis or with Pro Bono, dare I say, and that will get you onto this path of becoming a human rights lawyer of note.
Can I add something to that? I think this is a very important point, that you just made, and this also breaks our stereotypes of areas of law. I think for students, it's very important to realize that, for example, you have mentioned tort cases. Some of my work, for example, here in the United Kingdom has been in the tort law area. These are extraterritorial cases that arrive to the UK. They are really being litigated before commercial courts, but they are cases of great seriousness happening, in different jurisdictions. So when you actually get trained as a lawyer, I think it's important to get that contact with the law without having determined mind that perhaps this is the type of area. Try to have as much experience as possible, because you are going to find in that interaction what you may be good at, and also, where do you feel that you are using your skills better. So I do invite the young lawyers not to see the law as fragmented, but to try to see the law as something that in reality is all interconnected, and that the key thing is remedies driven. Particularly common law is remedies driven. So it doesn't matter what may be the action called. Eventually, what you are interested on is to provide a remedy for a client. So that is always going to be a flowing type of approach to the law. So learn to approach the law in that way from very early, because you will see that this separation that is very tight, tightly made, it is just a legal construction. In reality, life is not that way, and the challenges are there for us to provide a remedy as legal practitioners.
Thank you so much, Monica and Shireen. We have last question for Flavia. The question is, we often see that the law school offers optional clinic course only in 4th year and 5th year, and not in the initial years of the law school. How can a law student keep in touch with the world outside the walls of law school while fulfilling the academic obligations?
See, as Justice Kumar explained, it is your interest. It is your passion. So even as a student in school, apart from your school activities, supposing you're interested in dramatics or you're interested in music, or you are interested in education, whatever your interest is, you try to excel in that, you try to read about it, and now a lot of material is available on the net for you. So unlike our times, we actually had to get physical copies of a magazine, of an article. Now, when you do that, that is how exactly what if you're really interested, if you're really passionate about it, you will find ways to understand that. We get students in their first year. I mean, in a 5-year law school, you're so young, you're just out of your 12th standard and just started your first vacation. You want to do come to this an intern. Now, we do not like very young students to intern with us, basically because we are dealing with such horrible cases, such personal cases. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of trauma. Somebody is sexually abused, have had a very horrible rape case, and you have to hear all of it and follow that case. And if a student, very young student comes, rather than trying to understand the remedies that she requires, you are so overwhelmed with it that, you're not able to function. And we don't want such situation to happen. So they can get, if they come also, we give them research work or publication work, contribute to our newsletter, etc. But we very seldom give them an opportunity to interact with actual victims. And all of their interest is, I want to meet a victim, I want to meet a victim. Because they think that's the high point of their internship with Majlis, because where else will you get victims? But we try to avoid that. Firstly, we said, like you're too young. And we don't like a woman who is in their 40s and 50s talking to a 18-year-old girl about marital rape, for instance, about abuse in marriage, for instance, because they get so disturbed about it, for instance. And that's not what we want to convey to this. We want to convey, okay, there's a problem. How do we find the remedies for this? Which part of law we have to apply, what we should do, and also help the woman to understand her choices. She needs time. She will, if it's a rape case, then she will need time. A young girl will need time to come out of it, to understand what exactly happened to her. Even the recollection of the incident takes a long time. So we don't do this, but 4 years and 5 years, and particularly you must do your criminal law and family law. And only after that you will be able to help us. So when you are in first year and not doing your family law, I think you do your family law in the second year, criminal law, etc. Then after they come also, we make them go through our literature. We have written a lot of informal guidebooks for NGOs, for lawyers. So when they read that, they understand what exactly they're supposed to do. That's why we don't take less than 8 weeks. So to get them oriented itself, it takes about a month. And only then they can contribute to the organization. And apart from that, even when you join, let's say, a corporate firm, you have a job, etc. But if you are passionate, if you are interested, you can write a small article, you can see something happening around you. For instance, this most gruesome case that has happened in Uttar Pradesh now, the gang rape case, gang rape and murder case. Now there one DGP has said, the police, the district general police has said that there is no rape because there were no sperms found in the vaginal canal. Now this statement exposes the person of their lack of legal knowledge, that what exactly constitutes rape in India today, because we've had a lot of changes, etc. And detecting the sperm is not at all necessary, not at all important. But the whole media has picked it up and they're playing it again and again. Now, if you're really perturbed about it, you can read up this, you can read the articles that are written, and you can write your own little piece to say how disturbed you are about this. Whereas the law is going on one side and the popular belief is in something else. Or you can take up the caste issue, for instance, because this girl was from a backward caste, and how in that village or the same community is going through various kinds of atrocities. Rape is not just one of them. So you can broaden the issue, and you can, in your college magazine or wherever you are, a legal magazine, you can get it published. Now, if you have a body of such articles as contemporary issues come, we also had this one legal amendment called CAA, and there were a lot of protests against that. So what exactly is CAA? Why are women protesting? Why are people protesting? So you have a lot of contemporary issues. In our office, we have a system, we have a meeting every week where everybody comes in, and then they report what they have done, etc., exciting work, exciting cases. And then we take up one issue where everybody discusses that particular issue. On anybody can present, anybody can suggest a issue for everybody's understanding. And after that, maybe some young lawyer may say, I want to write an article on this for our news magazine. So this is the way you get involved at some level. And these meetings also now, they are on Zoom. And if somebody writes to us, please include me in the meetings, we definitely will do that. So that awareness, according to me, legal awareness is lacking in our country. Legal awareness is pathetically lacking even among the educated class. Forget the rural folks and uneducated people, but even the educated people do not have a clear concept of what law is, do not even have a clear concept of what is matrimonial law, what is a valid marriage, for instance. Even that concept you don't have. So you can take up any issue, you can write about it, make your peer group, you can make a presentation to your own peer group wherever you are, because I'm sure these are contemporary issues and people would be interested in listening to you. So you have to make this a habit when you get some time at your hand. Not that corporate firms give you a lot of time for this. You have to work like your ass out to be there. But even so, there might be some slack period and all, and you can definitely do this. A lot of students write to me. One thing they write to me, we want to profile you. That, we want to trace your journey. Another thing they write to me, give your opinion on this particular point. What do you think of this? What do you think of this litigation? Another law we have just brought in is the farmers' agricultural produce legislation, which is also very controversial, and there is a farmers' protest going on in our country right now. You can take up that issue if you're interested. What is agrarian reform? Why the farmers are committing suicide? So there are a number of such issues, and any issue you research and you gain knowledge will always be an advantage for you, whatever field you are. This is what I think.
Thank you so much, Flavia.
Let's see where you people are going from here now, after listening to all this. But I'm very happy that you all are getting involved in these issues. And I think it will stand you in good stead for the future.
Thank you.
Okay. Aditi has asked me to kind of bring some conclusion to this panel. I don't dare bring it to any conclusion. I don't think it can be brought to. I don't think there can be any end to this. End note to this conversation, and I don't think it is intended to be a conversation that should end. I think this was conceived as a beginning to several conversations with all of you, and all I would say is that we're really grateful that you flagged the messiness of this, the challenges, the fact that this is not glamorous work, and this is not about building our CVs. This is about really being committed to lawyering, and where a deeply held belief in justice is something that we cannot avoid. I mean,
I want to add something.
Yes,
just one point I want to add is that what has been my experience, like people say there's a lot of corruption in the court, you have to bribe everybody and all. In our entire existence, we have never done this. And most of the cases we have won. Never have we done that. Nobody asks us also. That's number one. Number two, wherever we asked like a particular challenging case and we wanted like a very senior counsel to appear for us, they've always agreed and given their services free of charge. Nobody's ever asked, given a bill or something like that. They may ask for expenses or something. So this is something I want to tell students In fact, that 66A case, Shreya Singhal, she's a student who filed this such an important litigation. And she consulted many of us and she said, like I'm planning to file this PIL on this particular issue. It's a privacy issue. So, and then she got somebody to argue the case and a lot of people were interested. A lot of people got involved with that case. So I really admire that girl who had that I want to challenge this 66A of the IT Act. So that way, if you are committed, if you want to go ahead, you will always find help. There's no dearth of help. People are not willing to help you. Even the topmost lawyers will appear for you free of charge, and they will be so glad that young person has taken this initiative and done all this work, background work. And maybe one person, maybe a group of 2 or 3. You should really do this and see how the impact it will have.
I think that's a brilliant, way to conclude it, Flavia. I don't need to add anything. So just the fact that there are enough role models right here before us. All of you have shown that it's hard, but it is doable. What we need is the commitment, and that as lawyers, we cannot really divorce ourselves from that commitment. We will not be a lawyer at all if we don't believe in justice and if we don't believe in our causes. So, but the fact that however challenging it is something that can be done, it is being done, and it actually adds to a great sense of fulfillment. And which is why, many of you mentioned the fact that the diversity of work is something that all of us crave to do meaningful work, and that is an inherent desire within each of us, as much as we have to also make sure that we earn enough money and lead a decent life. So those are the imperatives that, but we have, there are so many role models that we can follow to see that it is possible to bring the two together. And I think a law school is the best place to really work with that, the different compulsions that the legal profession brings to us, but as teachers, I think we owe a responsibility to the profession to keep those values on the anvil, to always remind our students that there cannot be a legal practice without believing in justice, without the values that we carry, that we cannot lose sight of our moral compass, each one of us, that we carry ourselves, and that it is an individual responsibility that we carry with ourselves as if we get a law degree from any institution. And I think all of us have a deep sense of responsibility towards that. We hope to keep engaging with you and the organizations, and I hope that our students will be able to turn to you for inspiration, for advice, and definitely that the big hope we have is that we will be able to not just do episodic support, but a long-term sustained relationship which lasts through a lifetime. And that's the hope with which all of us are here right now. And thank you so much from all of you joining from different parts of the globe, from your different time zones on a Sunday. I just don't know how to thank you enough, but thanks a lot for this personally. And as Jindal Law School, I will hand over to Harsh to say the formal vote of thanks. But thank you so much. I feel so invigorated. I have such a great sense of hope from this. And I'm reminded of my own journeys and my own challenges and how I dealt with them. And I just get hopeful all over again in times that have not been easy for any one of us. So thanks. And Harsh, please do the honors.
Thank you. With this, we have come to a close to our panel discussion. This was such a wonderful, invigorating discussion. We cannot thank the panelists enough. Much as it needs to be brought to a close today, we see this as a beginning of a longer continuing conversation, as Professor Pandey had mentioned. And we would like to thank Jindal Global Law School, OP Jindal Global University, and Professor Srijit for their constant support throughout this entire phase. With their support, we have been able to start this research group. We would like to thank the panelists who took time out of their busy schedules to attend this event and inaugurate JGU Pro Bono Publicus, and also be a part of the online panel on such an important topic. We would like to thank Professor Pandey for moderating the session and guiding us with the organizational aspects of the event. We would like to thank all of our viewers. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of JGU Pro Bono Publicus, I would like to end the event and we take our leave. Thank you once again and have a good day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.